And so it is such incredible grace that the self can meet itself like this. Such incredible grace that the being can simply be like this. That there are beings that are pulled to recognize beyond the surface of life, beyond the limitations of the mind. That there are beings that are ready to perceive the infinity of the eternal, timeless self. When the pull to know the self is alive, it is the self itself that creates that pull. It's because the knowing is already here and is enlivened and is ready to know itself. Even to be able to perceive that there is something more profound than the surface of life play of the me and the personal. What we are speaking about is not another experience. It is about the end of experience. The end of the experience of being a limited sense of person into the remembering of being the infinite, unbounded being. And of course, what we have known to be the person is still completely included, but it is seen for what it is, and it is no longer a distraction. It is no longer about the story of me. It is an awakening to the infinite, incredible flow of divine wholeness that we are in truth. It is a discovery of what this is really all about. And then through the vehicle of the point value that each one of us is, we could say the divine is able to open to more of itself. The infinite, divine, flowing within itself needs these points in order to open to more of itself. Can be a misconception that we just leave this vehicle behind and that it matters not. But that could not be further from the truth. It is the discovery of what is really going on here and what this really is. That the body itself is the process of experiencing. It is the vehicle of surrender, and it is the divine distillery that is reorganizing the discordant structures into the remembering of natural balance. This is not a personal journey, and it's not a personal unfolding, more experience for the me. It is the recognition of the infinite reality of what we are in truth. And through the ever deepening flow of infinity within itself, it is this incredible possibility to rebalance and harmonize. Live as life in perpetual surrender to itself. And so you see this surface of life experience It is not a story of me trying to juggle its way through life, trying to gather things, gather more experiences, trying to understand. It is about perpetual surrender. Absolutely everything is an invitation to surrender more. Surrender everything, we could say, to God, to the mother, to being, to truth, to love. The words don't matter. And yet certain words will resonate more and bring an enlivening. So the words don't matter, but whichever words bring an enlivening, sing those words and let the enlivening continue to dance and flow within itself. This unfolding is more incredible and profound than the mind could ever imagine. And do not imagine that it is ever done and that we are getting somewhere and that there is an arrival point, because it simply is just not like that. It is the discovery of the process of consciousness being consciously aware of itself, awake to itself, experiencing itself, and seeing everything in the light of itself, so that it can know itself more deeply. And that, in simple terms, is a process of surrender. In the unique unfolding, it is a constant surrender, deeper and deeper. A surrender deeper and deeper into the knowing of who you are in truth, the knowing of what all of this is. So we speak of the stillness, the silence of being. Because underneath the moving, changing dance on the surface of life, we have to come to recognize the stillness, the silence, and the simplicity of being, so that the being can remember simply being. Because simply being is really the doorway to consciousness knowing itself and ever awakening to a deeper and clearer knowing of itself. There is nothing to do. There is nothing to understand and nothing to achieve. It is to let go of all spiritual ambition, let go of all acquired knowledge, and to just simply be here. It is to let go of all spiritual experience. It is to live ever in the now, to be ever in the now, this moment just as it is, not hanging on to anything. This is surrender. It is a surrender to let go of story, to let go of me and mine, and to simply be here, to keep surrendering into the being and not following the dance of the mind and its story. It is a surrender to not keep perpetuating the same habits and moving from conditioning. All knowledge that is necessary is right here in the being. It is the vast field of intelligence that is the flow of consciousness. It is how consciousness is able to experience and know itself. and it knows everything there is to know about itself. It is all here. And so it is to surrender the gathered knowledge, the gathered experiences, to constantly surrender it all back to the being, to constantly surrender everything to the being, to God, to the mother, to love. Surrender it all to love again and again and again. Whatever sings in your heart, surrender it to that. Surrender it to not knowing. Surrender it to the eternal, immortal goodness that you are without knowing what that is. Surrender again and again and again. If ever the question pops into your mind, what to do, how to deal with this, what decision to make, just surrender and let the flow of life take care of it all. If there is a trigger or resistance or stress arising, surrender. If there is a wondering, what is going on with the body? What is wrong with me? Am I unwell? What to eat? What to do? Just surrender, right? There's never, ever a situation on the surface of life that is not inviting a greater surrender. Every moment is inviting. It is the outstretched hand with an open invitation. It has your name upon it. And it is the invitation into yourself to surrender name and form and knowing and story into the being. And this can seem very abstract to the mind. And the mind doesn't like abstract. The mind likes to know, to control, to feel protected within its boundaries and its limited world. But this kind of surrender, it's not really abstract when we're actually living it in the moment. It's more alive than anything we could imagine or hold on to, because it is life itself. It's like riding a wild horse, always bareback. It's fun and it's scary, and it's more beautiful in its sense of freedom than could ever be imagined. But we never know anything. Anything can happen in any moment. We cannot control and protect, and neither would we want to, because we do not want to be robbed from a moment of pure aliveness, of a moment of unconditional, wild, free, unabandoned, open-hearted love. It's what we are longing for. It is what every being is longing for. And it is all here, right here in the divine plan. But the divine plan involves a letting go of knowing, a letting go of controlling, and being wildly played, danced, sung, lived, beyond what could ever be imagined. And so this surrender and this surrender and this surrender again. Many, many years ago, my first teacher told me to surrender. And I said, I have. And he said, keep on surrendering. And I said, I have. And he said, keep on surrendering. And I would go back and say, and I have. So many years, so many years later, on it goes, and more beautiful it is, more beautiful than that young whippersnapper of an arrogant little being could ever have dreamed it could unfold into. And so the surrender in every moment, the not knowing in every moment, the being lived the being played, the being danced, the being love, the part that we so love to hear about, being love, that we long to be love. We long to love and be loved, but more deeply than that, we long to be love, to be the love that can never be without love. Because the knowing of being love is so deep and it relies on nothing external. Such an important part of this unfolding is to come to be so comfortable in an aloneness, to be so comfortable in your own presence, because the need for external companionship, validation, affirmation, love will always be a distraction away from the love that you are. As long as there is a needing something from the external in this department, it will always, always be a distraction away from deepening into the love that you are. So it is necessary to be able to be alone, to be immersed. Of course, some lives are given the grace of aloneness, and often those beings will long for companionship or partnership. And the ones that are given the grace of companionship, partnership, will long for more alone time and to not feel so obligated in relationship. And yet, of course, it does not really matter what the flow of life offers us. It's always perfect. Because it offers us, guess what? The invitation to surrender to what is given, to surrender to what is here as life living itself through the point that you are, the point of the infinite field, the infinite flow of divine. So it is grace to be alone. It is grace to have companionship, and we will always long with the mind in some way for what we don't have, imagining that things would be more full, more rich, more complete, more easy if the situation were different, right? But it's not like that. But we do need to know how to be alone, as in to be the being, to be with yourself, and to not need from the external, to find grace, to find joy, happiness, love in the aloneness, because this is the opening to oneness. Can imagine so many things about what this unfolding is, and we are habituated to give so much importance to what the mind thinks this life is, to wonder what's going to happen, what to do, where to go, what's next, right? But truly the flow of life is just flowing. And the more we can surrender to the flow of life, the more smooth and easeful and joyous is the adventure as a point in the infinite field. The more we are flowing at the point, the more infinity can flow through us, the more life can flow through us, the more the divine can flow through us as we are cultured and prepared and readied for finer and finer, more and more gorgeous, alive flows of what we truly are, right? So the more we surrender, the more we are able to receive and stop resisting. The more we surrender to the grace, whatever we want to call that, the mother, to Ma, to God, to the flow, to love, the more we surrender everything to that we just let our shoulders drop and we say, oh, it's not about what I want. It's not about what I think. It's about giving this moment to that again and again. Let it go. It's all God. It's all Ma. It's all love, right? This is the surrender. If all of this is God, then this too must be God. Doesn't feel like it in my little old mind right now, but this must be, right? So let the shoulders drop. Give it to God. Let God dance with it. Let her dance in exactly the ways that only she knows how. And let it be okay. Meet the stress in the nervous system. Meet what comes forward as resistance, as wondering, as curiosity, as confusion. Meet it all as an energy signature in your nervous system. And this too is part of the surrender, right? Everything is part of the surrender. There's nothing in life that is not the surrender. There's such profundity and such simplicity to surrender. I want, oh, catch it. I want what God wants. I want what love wants, right? Catch it, see it, illuminate it as the aware being, right? Superpower, awareness, that's what you are. You are pure awareness, awake to itself, pure consciousness, right? Consciousness, consciously aware of itself and awake to itself, knows itself in the here now as the timeless being. So superpower, awareness, every being has the same superpower. Be aware of it all, watch it all, and be aware of not identifying with anything. Be the vast open space in which it's all happening, the vast open space that is simply aware. Let go of all ideas of wanting to awaken. Let go of all ideas of wanting enlightenment, because the great glory, alleluia, is that you already are that. Where that is already here, right? So let go of the wanting, let go of the imagining that that is not here, and be yourself and discover that that too, it's all here. Awakeness is awake to itself. The divine light is enlightened. You are that. Discover what you are and recognize there is nothing to want, nothing to achieve, nothing to set as a spiritual ambition or goal. This will always only act as an obstacle, an obscuration. It is to come to know yourself here now in the being as this presence and in the vast intelligence of your own infinite being that is God's infinite being, right? The same. Your existence is God's existence. It's the mother. It's all the same. It is divine wholeness. And it already knows its own wholeness. It already knows. And you have that spark of knowing in you as the being. When you come to the felt sense of existence, when you come to the felt sense of being, simply being here now through the magic of stillness. When you come to the stop that is silence, this is the openness, the aperture to the infinite vast expanse of your true being, your true consciousness. And here, the gorgeous adventure of exploring your own consciousness, opening to the subtle perception of the being itself, has nothing to do with the me and the mind. It is the being itself that remembers itself here in the silence, here in the stillness. The being itself just recognizes, recognizes, remembers itself. It remembers its infinity. It remembers its unboundedness. It remembers its freedom. And you are that being remembering. Remember that you are the being, right? So this is why it is so incredible that we can be together like this, that we can be together in this truth, in this light, in this love, in this wide open heart, being the being, life living itself in constant, perpetual surrender to itself. Here now, here now, here now. Here now you already are everything that is longed for. If that does not feel true, then find your longing. Find the longing of your heart. Find it in the felt sense of your heart aching, yearning. You do not even have to know what it is yearning for, longing, aching for. Could be God, Ma, love, truth, freedom. Does not matter. In the felt sense of longing, it brings you to the aliveness of your heart that is like a fire. Let that fire be fanned with attention. Let that fire of your longing be fanned with the attention of absolute presence. When you are resting in the longing of the heart, it brings you to your own presence. And presence is here, and it is vast. And the recognition is that the longing in this moment, in the deep felt sense, is already fulfilled. That the longing brings us to the immediate and profound fulfillment on some level, in presence, in the being, a felt sense of openness, a felt sense of home, a felt sense of contentment, a felt sense of just being here and wanting nothing, right? We can, with the mind, say, well, that's not it, because the mind has that imbalanced impetus to want it all now, right? It wants a mental idea. It's this imbalanced Shiva. It wants it all. It wants the fullness right now. But we have to move to recognize that wanting, that desire of it all now. It has to be surrendered into the flow of grace to find a rebalancing through surrender, right? The wanting, the success, the drive, right? All now. Let's get this over with. Ambition, control, right? all of that can seem like a fire that's driving the spiritual path, the impetus. It can seem like sincerity and commitment. And of course, on some level it is. And it does carry qualities, values of essence, nature, without question. The one-pointedness, the ability to be steady, to remain, to be resolute, right? It's beautiful, but it has to give itself to the flow of grace. It has to give itself to not knowing, not controlling. It has to give itself to a flow, we could even say, of devotion. It has to give itself to what it cannot get in order to get, let's say, the fullness, the wholeness, because it has to rebalance, right? The learned, habituated imbalance has to learn to rebalance naturally for life, to rebalance, to find a natural harmony. And this is where control and one-pointedness and impetus and wanting and need, and yes, even desire, has to give way to surrender. It has to come into the more soft, yielding, surrendering aspect of itself, a flow of devotion. It has to give up control and hanging on. It has to let go into the softness and the receptivity. It has to be the receptive openness that receives the flow of grace when the divine is ready, right? It has to let go and receive the flow of being filled when the divine is ready to fill the cup that is surrendered and open in devotion, right? And so here the rebalancing naturally starts to happen in the knowing of the being, right? So you will start to recognize aspects of your nature, maybe your nature that you know of yourself. You can recognize the more one-pointed, the ability to be steadfast and directive, like a leader, you know, this kind of quality, to do it, to get it done, to show up, right? But we have to yield to this other side. And perhaps you might notice that there are parts of you that can be almost too yielding, too surrendered, a bit of a doormat, right? No, you don't really have that ability to be one-pointed, right? Because the nature can be that way too. So that part of the nature has to find, it could be like very devotional, but always looking for confirmation and affirmation and love, and to not really be able to find your way without companionship and guidance. You're always indecisive. You're always not really knowing, always feeling bashed around by life, right? Of course, we all have different cocktails of these parts of the imbalance, and we have parts of the balance where these cocktails in our laws of nature. But so much of that can be habituated. So as we come to the being and we surrender, we come both to a steadfastness and a presence of being, the aware being that is here now, here now, here now. It's like there's a sense of being which is here, direct, now, essence, awareness, right? And there's simultaneously this openness, this emptiness, there's this constant surrender, right? So we're rebalancing to find our naturalness, our natural balance. And the flow of life is pushing us to rebalance. It's pushing us to have to surrender control. It's pushing us to have to surrender, to find a little bit of a courageous knowing in the being, right? Instead of flailing and floundering, it's inviting us to be steadfast in our longing, to stay open and surrendered, but not to be playing in that story of the pain body and victimization, right? So we're rebalancing. So we are the open awareness, steadfast and true and here, now, but constantly surrendering in this moment, deeper into being, in devotion only to truth, to God, to the mother, to the being, in constant devotion, in constant letting go into the longing, and in the felt sense of wholeness, of simplicity, of recognition, of remembering. We constantly surrender into the beauty of what we are, but we don't hold on to it. We don't achieve. We don't be successful and awakened as a somebody. We surrender it again and again and again into itself. And so that we are carried deeper into the field of intelligence and true cognition, so that we are flowing as the flow of intelligence that is consciousness, consciously aware of itself, and graciously in the knowing of itself, and ever opening to more of itself. This is what reveals the process of consciousness, consciously aware of itself and experiencing itself. The process of how consciousness opens to more of itself is the flow of intelligence. Let us say that as we come to recognize this flow of intelligence, it's a subtle perception of how all of this works. It's like a very subtle area of the brain, right? We think the brain is like just in your head, but not so. Imagine that. There's a part of your brain that is infinite intelligence, right? So as we open and refine, as we become more subtle, we start to move from the subtlety. We start to move from these very fine, profound areas of both our nervous system that is constantly being refined and the very fine, subtle areas of the brain, right? So when the brain, the subtle, infinite intelligence of the brain and the nervous system, the subtlety of your nervous system starts to flow, not only in stress, right? It starts seeing through the stress and it starts to flow more finely as the finer and finer intelligence and feelings. Here, we start to be able to perceive more subtlety to how all of this is working and happening. And we are carried deeper and deeper. We could say we open in this vast and glorious adventure in consciousness, as consciousness, we open to deeper and deeper perspectives of what we are, like we see from vaster and vaster viewpoints, but simultaneously we become more subtle in our being as we open and open and open. We open to the infinite, eternal, timeless being. We recognize that what I am is not a singular point, isolated, but what I am is the infinite field, the vast, open, boundless being that is not fragmented or limited at a singular point. This is when we recognize that what we have known to be the body and the mind and the person is a point, a singular point in the infinite field. But we open up to the infinity of the consciousness that is unbounded and free in the knowing of itself. It includes the singular point that we have thought we were, but now consciousness knows itself everywhere in the infinite field and references itself everywhere in a more inclusive way. Doesn't feel isolated, stuck like an island in the mind body, cut off from the rest of its consciousness, right? It recognizes its essence nature, its source. And when it recognizes its essence nature, its source, when you recognize your essence nature, the source of what you truly are, you recognize your infinity, that you are boundless freedom. You have never, ever been trapped in the body-mind. And yet there will be moments where you make an adventure to feel identified in the body-mind. Get me out of here. And back, phew, thank goodness for the sanctuary, the grace of knowing the infinite being that is freedom and stillness and silence and grace. And in the knowing of this, the knowing, it starts to be recognized as a flow of knowing, starts to be recognized as a flow of life, of consciousness, knowing itself, ever growing, opening in the knowing of itself. There's an aliveness, an alertness, and a wild beauty here in a heart that knows itself and is ever open and flowing within itself. And here we start to feel the love and the joy flowing, right? We can feel the love and the joy as we open to the vastness. But that is why we sometimes wonder, well, here's the being and here's the peace, but where's the love? Where's the joy? And some will feel, well, here's the love and here's the flow and here's the wildness, but where's the peace? Where's the silence? Right? It's all balancing itself out. It's all harmonizing itself. The intelligence is taking care of everything. Nothing to do, nothing to worry about. Everything is taking care of itself. The incredible grace that we can meet like this is that the self can speak to itself like this, that the being can speak to itself like this. And as it speaks to itself like this, it is opening up more of the subtlety of itself. It's enlivening the whole field of itself. It's enlivening itself at every point. Yes, in you, it's enlivening itself. It's bringing a deeper remembering, right? So you start to feel recognition. You start to feel the yes, the resonance, the aliveness. You start to feel more yourself, more open, more free, more happy, more joyful, more clear. You start to feel the enlivened resonance of who you are in truth, and the remembering deepens. So that is the grace of us meeting like this, is we get to bathe in the resonance of what we truly are and deepen in, celebrate, be in the gorgeous celebration. It does not matter where we are in this vast open gorgeousness. Wherever you are perfection, and you are yourself. You already are yourself. So just to let go, surrender without being someone that is trying to surrender. Let surrender overcome you. Let it just be like a wave that just washes itself back into the ocean, right? It just overcomes itself. And before it knows anything more about its life as a wave being washed up on the shore, it is pulled back into the ocean. The glory has pulled you back in. The ocean of grace has pulled you back into yourself, back in to the remembering of the essence nature, and surrender has happened. And here you are, and the knowing of yourself is deeper. There's nothing to do. This is not a mental exercise or experience. It is the direct experience of the end of experience of me, and the discovery of the eternal experiencing of yourself as the gorgeous glory of the divine self, the divine being, just simply being itself. The rebalancing is happening. It's happening in and as everything, always. So nothing to do, just to be and to be and to be and to be yourself. A busy little bee, just being yourself. The field of stillness is enlivened. The field of silence is enlivened. Perhaps you can notice that there's more awareness of the stillness. It's not so much in the background. It's right here. Stillness, silence, peace, simplicity. And yet you might also recognize that the silence has this dynamic aliveness, almost like it's roaring with silence, right? Just like when you put a seashell over your ear and you can hear the roaring ocean, right? The same with the silence. It's roaring. There's nothing there to make a sound, but it's roaring within the knowing of itself. It's so alive. And the aliveness is the dynamic silence, the silent being, the still silent being, and the dynamic flowing being, all the same one being. As we open to the dynamic flowing, there's the knowing of the being. This is how we open to being life. And it's here that we can feel more enlivenment of the joy and the love and the happiness often, right? There's happiness and joy in the silent, peaceful being. but it feels more like a blissful equanimity, or a blissful emptiness, or a blissful openness, a contentment, an okayness, a wholeness. But as the flow of the knowing starts to really start to dance within itself, life flowing unconditioned within itself, more of the joyful aliveness, the delight, the awe, the wonder, the joyfulness starts to come forward. There are ways too that the love really opens to more of itself. The way the love really opens to more and more of itself is as the heart opens to more and more of itself. And this is where life, the flow of life, is such a graced offering as part of the whole, because the flow of life, it will constantly challenge us to surrender. It will constantly trigger us and bring forward everything that we don't want. And as this happens, this is the grace that invites this constant surrender and meeting what we don't want, loving all of the parts that have been hidden and suppressed and rejected. And as we love all of the parts of ourself that have been pushed down in the early life and through the life, as they rise up again courageously on the crest of a wave to say, love me, remind me who I am, bring me home too, right? Everything is just longing to be met in the presence of love, unconditional love, in the presence of the light of wholeness. So as these parts of ourselves rise up courageously out of the trenches, can we allow everything as the being to come forward? Can we love every part that courageously comes forward? Most importantly, the parts that we don't want to love, the parts that we judge about ourselves, the parts of ourselves that we would rather keep hidden. Can we love everything that arises in ourselves? And here's the glory, is that every character in our show is a part of ourself. Imagine the miracle. Imagine the miracle that creation, the appearance of creation is. That every part of ourself that we have pushed down, it comes forward as a character in the show so that we can meet that part of ourself. It's not always exactly that we are that being, because that being will be playing out their own hidden parts. But the glory is, as that being plays out their hidden parts, their catastrophic parts, they bring forward the triggers of our catastrophic parts. And what a resistance can want to arise, but what a celebration that if this wasn't happening, how would we know that that was stuffed right down there in the far hidden nether regions of our being? How would we know that that sadness, that that tenderness, that that anger, that that brokenness, that that rejection, that that abandonment, that unlovable, unworthy part of ourself, how would we know it was there if one of the gorgeous, glorious characters on the stage of life didn't act out exactly what is needed for it to come forward, right? Another invitation to surrender. when we find ourselves resistant, when we find ourselves in a loop thinking about what is wrong with someone else or what they need to do, how can we find that part of ourself that is looping in a story and invite that forward? Sometimes we need support with this. Sometimes the loop can be so protected and deep that we need a little help to bring forward what is really hiding in there. But the grace is that help will be offered too. It will present itself in companionship, in Sangha. It will present itself as that partner that you sometimes wish you didn't have, so you could be alone more often, right? Everything comes around to be included in the surrender. Everything comes around to be included in the remembering of wholeness. You see this intelligence, this divine plan, it's got it all covered. It's a wise divine wholeness. It's pure wisdom, right? So, such beauty, such grace. There's nothing that is playing out. It is just the grace of being able to have a deeper, more wholesome, balanced perspective of what is really going on here. And being open to the deeper and deeper refinement and culturing that happens as a refinement process of life, inviting us to surrender again and again more deeply to life, because we are life. So life is inviting itself to surrender more deeply into itself. Consciousness is consciously experiencing itself in order to know itself in the light of awareness. This is what is meant by be the aware being and just watch, right? See everything, all parts of yourself in the light of awareness. Allow the natural surrender of life into a deeper knowing of itself to happen naturally. As it happens naturally, the flow flows more. We want the flow because it is the flow that carries us into divinity. We need the flow. We need the aliveness. We need the aliveness and movement of the radiant heart. We need the point to be cultured and refined because it's what carries us deeper. We need the body to be cultured and refined. We need the nervous system to be cultured and refined. So we have to not resist anything because the intelligence is carrying us, right? The intelligence is carrying us deeper and deeper. All of us surrendering again and again and again. This is what life is. You see, if we get distracted with the me and the mine and the phenomena and what I want and all of this stress, if we get distracted in the story of it, we're missing this graced opportunity to know the source, the essence, nature, and to fall deeper and deeper into the eternal life, deeper and deeper into the flow of grace, to know divine wholeness, to know God, to know what God is, to know the Mother, to know her grace and how she is appearing as all of this, how this is her, this is the expression of her bliss, of her heart. This is her, right? This existence is her. This existence is her existence. This existence is God's existence. But we have to come deeper and deeper into the wisdom where the knowing of this reveals itself in consciousness itself, and then carries us prior to consciousness into divinity, so that divinity, we could even say, so that divinity awakens fully to its wholeness through the point of view, right? It already knows itself. She already knows what's going on, right? She's already supercharged, self-sustaining, divine light. She wants to awaken to herself through you. Give her the opportunity. Give the glory of God the opportunity to awaken to itself at the point of view. And at the same time, you know what you are. You discover who you are in truth. And somewhere in there, there's a meeting where you know what you are, and that opens to itself through all of these different perspectives, through you, in you, as you. And you are this living gorgeousness. You know that what you are is not separate in any way from the glory. You are a living emanation of the glory. You already are, and yet it can get deeper, right? This is the beauty of being in perpetual surrender, divine surrender. And as the surrender deepens, it becomes more wholehearted, more merciful, more devotional, more beautiful. We find ourselves weeping at the beauty, at the glory. We find ourselves weeping at the love of love itself, right? We find ourselves with these incredible graced tears that fall just in the absolute awe and holiness of what all this is. Give yourself to it in utter surrender, without knowing with the mind what this is all about. This is the natural rebalancing that is happening. As these words come, the resonance enlivens the recognition at the point that you are. There's nothing personal about this incredible graced meeting. This is the self speaking to itself, enlivening the resonance of itself, because it wants to know itself through the point that you are. It wants you, it loves you, and it wants all of you. It wants to awaken to itself in you, as you, and live in your, through your body mind. It wants to take it all over, recalibrate it, restructure it. It wants to refine it so that it can live right on the surface of life, right? So we surrender my selfish gain to the will of God, and then the will of God can be lived on the surface of life. This is the age of enlightenment. We are living in the age of enlightenment. The collective is being shifted. It looks like chaos right now, but that is the gorgeous grace. It's the invitation to awaken. It's the invitation to find out what is truly important. We start to recognize this. We can even recognize in the collective that beings are saying love is important, not fear. But it's just the beginning. We are the pioneers We are the pioneers, the way showers, but we have to show ourselves first. We have to show ourselves the way in order to be the light that can guide, right? Yes, can say very simply to companions that say this love is the most important. Yes, we can say, yes, it is. Yes, it is. And we meet them where they are with the openness that they have in order to nurture the resonance. We're not trying to shout it out where beings cannot receive the depth of reality. We are opening first, right? Remember on the aeroplane, bringing the oxygen over your own face first. Breathe in the light of your own life unconditioned. Be the breath of life. Be the flow of unconditioned life first. Know who you are, what you are, and being the way shower will naturally arise in simple and subtle ways when you are just being yourself, shining the light. It is in the smile, right? With every being you interact with. It is the open heart. It is your presence. This is the grace that we offer. It is not about standing on soapboxes, and it is not even about sharing satsang, right? It's about being the living embodiment of what you are realizing yourself to be. Can be all these ideas about, now I have to step into action. What you can know is that how you are to be in action cannot be avoided. Mostly we are carried into action in the most simple ways. Where there is a wanting, it's often not a true wanting, it's often a wanting of the mind. The divine command usually happens in the beings that don't want and yet are forced by the flow of grace. And of course, what is that? It's another surrender. It's another surrender, right? It's not about what we want. It's about what Ma wants. It's about what love wants. It is a flow of grace. It is to see this for what it is and to know there is a naturalness, and every being has grace that wants to flow on the surface of life. It is to allow that grace to flow by doing our own work, by being in perpetual surrender, coming to be the graced flow of intelligence, and then allowing the light to shine where it wants to shine, surrendering, being stretched, letting the light shine exactly where it wants to shine, letting presence be present where it wants to be present, letting love love what it wants to love, how it wants to love and show up, right? That we're not controlling, we're not using the mind, we're allowing that flow, and we are watching for every subtlety of protection. We're watching for every subtlety of arrogance. We're watching for every subtlety of ignorance. We're watching for every subtlety of denial, right? The more we fall into this, it gets subtler and subtler and subtler, more and more refined, but it does not stop. We keep falling in and falling in. And that's the glory. That's the beauty of being yourself. Surrender and surrender and surrender, as life surrenders into itself. Love surrenders into itself. The wide open heart surrenders into itself. As the heart surrenders and surrenders into itself, this is where we start to feel more of the sense of the love flowing alive. This is where we start to recognize being the love, because the layers of protection that keep us from love, the karmic obscurations that keep us from love, are dissolved and dissolved and dissolved into the being. We can open to divine love. Divine love is still, we could say, a safe love. Can we open through this refinement and dissolving of our protections in the world too, on the surface of life? Can we open to love, be the love that loves itself in and as everything and any and everyone, as every situation? Can we open to this depth of love? Can love open to its fullness in all? Of course it can. And it's on a mission, a divine mission, right? Can we feel that love where the heart might touch into vulnerability? Can we stay open? Can we meet what it takes to surrender, to stay open when the protection wants to close and protect and act out a protective mechanism? Can we surrender all of these subtle threads that hold the body in tension and patterns of holding, so that more flow can flow through, right? So many subtleties, but you start to feel the enormity and the profundity, and yet the simplicity of what surrender really is. It is the self surrendering to itself, surrendering into the divine. It is a flow of devotion, and it is the recognition of the true flow of intelligence, the true flow of wisdom. So, to keep the company of wisdom, to keep the company of yourself, of the being, of the wise, right? Where wisdom is flowing, where true unconditioned love is flowing, to keep the company of yourself in aloneness and in companionship, that it does not matter what the flavor of life is, that we need, again, balance, right? All of the imbalances will be balanced out so that life can flow in its naturalness. Harmony is being restored to the surface of life. The light is being restored to the surface of life, but it needs points. It needs the points of infinity to be open to the infinite nature and to continue to deepen, so that the light can shine through the point on the surface of life. This is what you truly are, not a person, a point of infinity, a point for the divine to open on the surface of life, to know itself, to experience itself, for consciousness to refine within itself, to have the possibility of opening to more of itself through you, not you, the name and the story, but you, infinite being, awake to itself, you, the self, knowing itself. Recalibrating, restructuring the brain even, restructuring the heart from sense of personal to infinite, brain restructuring from sense of personal, my brain inside this head, to infinite, cosmic. Restructuring the flow of grace, restructuring body from physicality to cosmic body to light body. The body, the mind, it's all consciousness, it's all intelligence. It's the most incredible appearance of creation that all of this appears. Intelligence shows us how it all happens, shows us what we truly are. Opens the perspective of seeing, zooms out and opens so that we have an infinite perspective of seeing, that we are no longer limited and imagining a small me and my life and my story. We are opening to the true perspective. We are opening to true life, living itself. Keeping companionship wise, the particulars, knowing yourself, each other through particulars, it's not so important. To know and create companionship in wisdom is what is important. Be aware of distraction, how the mind wants to connect in ways that can be distracting. Is to be aware of this. In ways that perpetuate the stories and drama and phenomena. Of course, life continues to play out and we see life and we share life, but to be the living of life wisely, that life lives wisely. It enjoys itself, it enjoys companionship wisely. It does not indulge or get lost in identification with the phenomena. It knows what is really going on here. Let the glory shine in your heart, in your brain, in your body, in all that you are, in every atom of your being. Let the divine know herself and shine.